Welcome, my friends, to another Showdown episode. This time, we are taking 5 different wireless routers and showing you which ones are going to get you the best real-world speeds tested in real-world scenarios by the one and only NCIX wheels. So to make this happen for you guys, we cracked open 5 of what claim to be high-powered or long-range routers and put them to the test. Now, our first test was right next to it. The next test is down the hall, so we have distance to contend with. And the third test is actually back in the warehouse, so there's both distance and obstacles to contend with. So in order from left to right, we have the Amped Wireless RTA15, we have the ASUS RTAC66U, the Buffalo N600, the JCG, which you've probably never heard of, 750M, and the TP-Link N750. So what these routers all have in common is that they all support wireless N. Now, we did not test wireless AC for a couple of reasons. Number one is that very few people are using it, so maybe an AC range showcase is going to come at a later date. And number two is that wireless N is inherently longer range anyway. It is more susceptible to interference from devices like microwaves, cordless phones, or other people's wireless networks, but due to the lower frequency nature of the signals, it is inherently better at long-range transmission. So now with that out of the way, let's take a closer look at these routers. Starting with the Amped wireless unit, it's a fairly bog-standard looking router with a glossy finish, 3 external antennas, 4 gigabit Ethernet ports, and a single USB port. Pretty unassuming looking. Next up, we've got the ASUS RTAC66U, which has their sort of diamond crosshatch finish on the top, if that's important to you. 3 external antennas that actually look very similar to the Amped ones, 4 gigabit Ethernet ports, and 2 USB ports, allowing you to plug in things like external storage. For the WZR600DHP from Buffalo, we've got a pretty unique looking bunny ear antenna implementation, 1 USB port, 4 gigabit Ethernet ports, and a design that is actually meant to stand up on end as opposed to be laying down flat. Lots of ventilation on this one as well, which is interesting. Next up, we've got our JCG unit, which has, again, a standing up implementation of the overall design of the router and antennas that stick up even higher, 5 of them, with kind of a flat shape to them. They're also quite large. 4 gigabit Ethernet ports as well as 2 USB ports round out the I/O on the back. And finally, the TP-Link unit lies flat, but has what I would say are the biggest antennas of all, if this was an antenna-sized measuring contest, 2 USB ports and 4 gigabit Ethernet ports. So from the desk, we're not going to give you guys much of a feel for how far away from the routers we were, because it was about like this. So very, very close. The 2 clear winners here are actually the JCG router as well as the Buffalo router. The Buffalo router has not quite the same signal strength as the JCG, but in terms of sheer send and receive bandwidth that we were able to achieve, they were both very, very similar, with everything else kind of coming up afterwards. For our first test, we went to the bathroom. No, not all the way onto the toilet, but we went to the bathroom so that we could do a range test over what I would consider to be a very reasonable, open, line-of-sight range. Now here, the winners and losers are really not quite as clear as they are for some of the other tests. I mean, the winner for receive speed was clearly the Buffalo router, and then it was followed by a pack of other routers that are very, very close. And then on send speed, everyone performed quite well, with only really Buffalo pulling ahead of the rest of the pack, and only the Amped wireless router really falling behind the others. At long range, we took a hike all the way from the new studio space down to my old office, which is way the heck down at the end of the hallway here. And the numbers change up once again. So when it comes to receive speed, which bear in mind, guys, is what you're going to do most of if you're just browsing the internet, the ASUS router actually came out as the clear winner, followed by the Buffalo router and the JCG router that were the second and third place contestants. And then when it came to send speed, well, things shake up once again, with the Buffalo router coming in first, followed by the TP-Link and JCG routers as the second and third place contestants, with the amped wireless router actually not performing very well at all at this kind of a distance. So while we hike to our final destination, haha, except I'm not going to die, don't worry, I want to tell you a little bit about our testing methodology. So this last destination is just as far away, but actually down a floor. There's a few wireless networks kind of around here, just like you might have at home from your neighbors or whoever else. We're using just a pretty normal laptop, other than that it's very high-end. So it's an MSI Dragon laptop using an Intel wireless implementation. So pretty similar to what you're going to be running, quite frankly, in your Ultrabook or notebook, or whatever other mobile devices you have. No external dongles or range boosters or anything like that. And finally, we used Passmark 3 times over a period of 2 minutes and took the average. So now I bring you the results from the torture test. When it comes to sent data speed, ASUS comes out on top here with a bit of a mixed bag afterwards, and the amped wireless router coming in last. And when it comes to receive speed, well, actually, this looks pretty darn good. So Buffalo, ASUS, and JCG all delivered acceptable speeds where you'd actually be able to browse the internet from that far away. The TP-Link one does all right at around half of the other routers, and the amped wireless doesn't manage to connect in this particular test. So thank you, now that we're back here in the studio with all the routers in front of us, for checking out this torture test, range test of these 5 high-powered routers. Don't forget to subscribe to NCIX Tech Tips for more videos like this from ncix.com.